Go ahead, Frank.
Okay. Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to introduce Gary Senft. Gary is retired and he's a former Vice President and Associate General Counsel, Public Policy and Regulatory Affairs for Great West Life Assurance Company, London Life Insurance Company, and Canada Life Assurance Company. Gary's practiced law in the financial services sector after receiving his law degree from the University of Manitoba in 1977. He began his legal career with Investors Group, Inc. and joined Great West Life in 1991. Over his career, Gary supported many lines of business. He maintained a keen interest in legislative and regulatory developments and served as Vice President and Associate General Counsel, Public Policy and Regulatory Affairs with Great West Life. For many years, Gary chaired the Public Policy and Regulatory Affairs Program Support Group and was a member of its Public Policy and Regulatory Affairs Government Relations Steering Committee. He was active in the insurance industry affairs, participating in a number of committees of the Canadian Life and Health Insurance Association. He's the past chair of the Canadian Life and Health Insurance Association and the Legal and Legislative Committee, and a past chair of the Executive Committee of the Legal Section. His interests include polo, music, and community service. Currently, he's on the board of the Manitoba Council for International Cooperation and a member of the Manitoba Horse Council's Facility Committee. For the past 11 years, he's acted as co-chair of Peace Days, now the Rotary Winnipeg Peace Builders Committee. He was one of its co-founders. In his spare time, he loves to engage in all things medieval and has been the lead organizer for many years of the Medieval Festival held at Cooks Creek, Manitoba. We look forward to your presentation. Please welcome Gary Senft.
Thank you. Okay, so well, thank you very much, Frank. And I'd also like to thank Brent and Rani and Jeanette for the words that were spoken at the beginning of the event today. Brent did a really good job of modeling what I'm going to be talking about, because we're talking about creating belonging. And what Brent did was to give people who were non-Rotarians who joined the meeting a very warm welcome and welcome them back, in fact, to join in again at any time. And Jeanette gave a very compelling story about her background as well. So I found those to be just very fitting to our introduction today and what I'm going to be speaking to you about. I've had the privilege of meeting many of you at past functions. And today, as a non-Rotarian ally of Rotary, I'd like to thank you for the opportunities I've had to work with your organization through what was our Peace Days Committee and is now the Winnipeg Rotary Peace Builders Committee. This work has been ongoing for me for 11 coming on 12 years now, since I first kind of met up with and teamed up with David Newman and the work that he's been doing on an even longer and ongoing basis. I've met many interesting members of your organization and also through our Peace Builders Committee. What's a little unusual about it is the committee itself is probably about 60% women, with members coming from a very diverse cultural and racial background and age group and experiences. So it is already a very diverse group, which makes it very interesting. This committee structure allows us to have just less than half as non-Rotarians, and that will vary from time to time. But the important thing about that is it creates the opportunity for some unique collaborations and for members to follow their own passions while working hand in hand with Rotary. I would like to thank you today by encouraging you all to keep up the good work of service above self. You are also passionate about that, and it really highlights the importance of that work. And I'd just like to share with you some of my own personal experiences. I would start with a question, and the question I have is, do you feel you belong? So I'd ask for a virtual show of hands, and we just, you know, in this virtual world, we'd pretend that we're all putting up our hands. And I think most of you will put up your hands. And I think you'll do that instinctively. However, I'm just going to ask you whether you understand really what my question was. It was very vague. Do you feel you belong? Did I mean, do you belong to Rotary? Are you a Winnipegger? Are you a Canadian? What did you think it actually meant? But belonging is a very important feeling. So if you answered affirmatively in your own mind, you probably feel comfortable in your own skin to some extent in answering that question. It involves a close and personal relationship, a sharing. That's what it means. A sense of belonging is fundamental to the way humankind organizes itself. Having a sense of belonging is so important considering the way we group and label ourselves and others. We are members of families, charities, sporting groups, religions, political parties, cities, countries, nationalities, just to name a few. Nearly everything we do is organized around belonging to something. Indeed, belonging is very important to both physical and mental health and helps us to cope with the stresses of everyday life. To say that we belong on this planet as a member of the human race seems simple enough. We clearly share much in common, given that human beings are 99.9% identical from a genetic makeup perspective. Conversely, we share only about 1% of our DNA with bananas. So the question is, would you rather hang around with a bunch of humans or a bunch of bananas? And I say that a bit in jest, but we have just so much in common that it just seems natural that we'll want to be sharing things together. So recognizing that we belong on the planet Earth and that we need to work together through positive peace is so important, particularly given the challenges and the crossroads that we're at today. On the dark side, and by way of context, everywhere we turn, we're confronted with global threats to our continued existence as we have known it. Hopefully, we can all agree that climate change, for example, is very real. Now that the US administration has changed, I think almost everybody believes this. But our grandchildren will likely grow up in a very different environment, one that contains so many more natural disasters, and we may see the extinction of many species. So a much different time. Every time we turn on our news, we get tense, hearing about nations at the brink of war or engaged in genocide, most recently in Myanmar, and always with the threat of nuclear weapons being used in our lifetime. The doomsday clock now stands at 100 seconds to midnight. It's a sobering thought. The pandemic has, of course, brought the world together to face a common viral threat. It hasn't known since the Spanish influenza. It demonstrates the need for global cooperation and to meet the global challenges that we're facing. And if that's not enough, the events of January 6th are burnt into our Canadian psyches, much like the events of 9/11 were. The images of citizens across our shared border wreaking havoc on the Capitol were frightening, and the increasingly volatile rhetoric from extremists is terribly concerning. These events seemed to be the accumulation of so many other days of unrest in the United States relating to racial issues. Never before have societies all around the world gathered together to show solidarity to the Black Lives Matter movement. So many people all over the world felt horror at witnessing George Floyd's last minutes of life as he cried out, "I can't breathe." There is reason to be worried at the level of division, not only on display in the United States, but within our own communities. We have the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It's written a comprehensive report, but what have we done in response to the calls to action? Many folks don't want to hear anything more about how Indigenous people in our society continue to suffer. There is a lack of understanding about how they've sustained generational trauma and the fact that that may take some time, perhaps even generations, to heal, and only if people are willing to be engaged and truly engaged in the process of reconciliation. This is an issue that your own Honoring Indigenous Persons Committee is heavily engaged in. I'd like to now turn to the brighter side. On the brighter side, there are forms of existential threats that can be addressed with the realization that we're all human beings, that we all belong to the human race, that diversity is a fact, and that inclusion is one of the best assets for our survival. It will require the grassroots to pull together and make a real stand, a real choice. And Rotary is and can be a leader in this regard, in my mind. It's been said that diversity is a fact, while inclusion is a choice. I believe that choosing inclusivity is crucial to the future of our societies. There's no question that there is a diversity in our world, in our countries, provinces, cities, and communities. It's plain and simple, it's a fact. But inclusion is not the same thing as diversity. We can strive for diversity on our boards and committees, in governments and organizations like Rotary, Kinsman, Kiwanis, and others. But diversity without inclusion is like half of an equation. It's like whitewater rafting without a paddle. We can't get to where we want to go without embracing the need to be inclusive. An inclusive society is one where people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, races, and religions and beliefs feel comfortable to be who they are and who feel like they truly belong within that society and can celebrate their differences. An inclusive society does not tolerate racism and prejudice. An inclusive community or organization welcomes everyone. There is no us and them. Inclusivity rests upon trust, and people need to trust that they are part of a whole. Inclusivity is what people need in order to feel like they belong. A community that is not inclusive and doesn't have trust can't really grow in the same way. It builds walls to keep others out instead of building bridges to allow others in. Much of this divisiveness, unfortunately, is on display south of the border at this time. With all of the challenges we're facing in our world, you might ask yourself, okay, but realistically, what can I do? What can I do to affect positive, meaningful change that will help create a society where my children and my grandchildren can live in peace, where people are accepted for who they are, where they are comfortable to make room at our own tables for those who look different from us, speak different languages, hold different beliefs, and where we can feel comfortable joining each other's tables to have that sense of belonging. Well, as I said, for the past about 11 years, the Peace Days Committee, and now the Winnipeg Rotary Peace Builders Committee, has been working to try and create these forms of dialogues between groups within our community in an effort to create an understanding amongst them and to advance the goals of creating the comfortable environment where we can belong. In doing so, we look to facilitate and inspire the work of others. I know you're generally aware of the goals of our shared work, but I want to give maybe 4 examples of some of the ongoing work just to demonstrate how each event, each opportunity for shared dialogue, such as that presented today, just gives us important routes for action, not just words, that we can engage in with our broader community. We want to learn about and from each other. That's the only way forward towards positive peace. Youth and the Future and Working with Linda Connor and the Department of Education and Estelle Lamoureux have supported this process for years. And what we've done is had a children's peace walk around the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. These two, meaning Estelle and Linda, have also initiated youth-led events dealing with the nuclear threat and climate change. So when I was mentioning those existential threats earlier on the darker side, here you have people in Winnipeg engaging with youth to really move events forward. Estelle, for example, has also created a national ethics bowl for high school students, and I'm pleased to be one of the judges for these events. We just had one of the ethics bowls this past week. Some of the work takes time, and goes on for many years. And so David and I, many years ago, spoke with Art Morrow. Many of you will know Art Morrow and his wonderful work that he does with the Arthur V. Morrow Center for Justice, Peace and Justice. He's a former president of Investors Group and was a former boss of mine. So I found it powerful when he said the statement, Winnipeg can be the Geneva of the North, and he shared his vision. Since then, we'd been searching for a means of measuring positive peace, and voila, Rotary International, through a strategic alliance with the Institute for Economics and Peace, introduced a few years ago the Global Peace Index. Eduardo da Costa, a Brazilian Rotary Peace Scholar living here in Winnipeg, has been very engaged with this process. He's a member of our committee and a peace ambassador for the IEP. There's a short video that's available for that, and perhaps we'll be able to share the link with you. It's a few years ago, but I thought it was very powerful. So why was that so inspirational? Well, it was inspirational because having real mechanisms to show that you're moving forward to advancing is really important to engage with businesses and others to get them on board with you. So what we did was we brought the IEP representative, who actually is the founder, Steve Kilalia from Australia, to Winnipeg, and he spoke at a number of forums, including at Great West Life, my former employer. And there we also have brought them together with other groups, the United Way, which has the PEG Community Index, and the Compassionate Cities folk, who have the Compassionate Peace Index. So we brought three indexes together to have an important dialogue around how do you measure positive peace. We've also been engaged with Rotarians, including Rani Jaratam and John Melnick, in the creation of the Winnipeg Peace Builders Toastmasters Club. This is a new club. It's in its second year. It has about 20 newcomer members, and Rani and John have been providing guidance to it. It's believed to be the first such club whose concept joins in with a new strategic alliance between Rotary International and Toastmasters International, fostering leadership and belonging. You can join one of those Toastmasters groups meetings on Wednesday nights, and you'll be amazed to just see how powerful they are as these newcomers to Winnipeg come together, learn English skills, networking, leadership, and sharing. There's about a 2-minute video that perhaps Eva can share by a link at the end of this meeting. In my work on the board of the Manitoba Council for International Cooperation, I was also very pleased to see that the Rotary Club of Winnipeg has become a member, and that will help support it in Rotary's international development work going on from here in Winnipeg. There's more opportunities yet to come. The City of Winnipeg, for its first time, is holding an anti-racism week from March the 19th to the 27th for its employees, and some events will be open to the public. The Winnipeg Club, together with Peace Builders Committee, is working on a number of these events to support the city's work. And interestingly enough, again, it's being initiated by the Mayor and Council and organized by a city staff under Noel DePape, a Rotary Peace Fellow alumni. Again, not a coincidence. You can see all these folks engaged with Rotary. This is a significant development with long-term potential for deeper collaborations. As a prelude to this week, on March 17th, one of your own members, Izzadine Hawamada, will share with you his life experiences having come to Winnipeg from Palestine, and we'll do a presentation, Anti-Racism Through Personal Narrative, demonstrating the power of storytelling. Our committee is also working with Kauser Ahmed and the Conflict and Resilience Research Institute Canada to provide a virtual presentation by Tony McAleer. He is a former white supremacist and an author of a very important book on the area of how to extract yourself from a life of hate. In that audience will be Bob Christmas, another individual who you're very familiar with, Bob, a policeman and an author who's taken quite a position on human trafficking, and we support the work that Bob does. I'll leave you, I hope, on an optimistic note, believing that there's never been a better time for service above self. It is a good time for Rotary to be a leader and to collaborate with other service organizations that it can influence, as Rotary is taking on some truly remarkable initiatives at the local to global level, and these need to be shared. In my mind, if you're looking for a better world to share, a feeling of belonging with others is so important. And I'd encourage you to make an effort, keep and teach an open mind, and practice and an attitude of acceptance. So with that, I hope that you have a great day, and keep up the great work at Rotary. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you.